The sun was just rising over New Horizon City, its golden light spilling over the rooftops and shining on the busy streets. People were starting their day, some heading to work, others opening their shops, and a few just enjoying the fresh morning air. Among them was John Carter, a young human engineer with messy brown hair and a habit of taking shortcuts to avoid the city crowd. This morning, he decided to cut through the public garden, a place filled with colorful flowers, tall trees, and an old stone fountain in the middle. The garden was quiet except for the soft splash of water from the fountain. John liked it this way, peaceful, almost like the city noise could not touch him here. But as he walked closer to the fountain, he noticed someone standing there, staring at him. It was a girl. No, not exactly a human girl. Her skin was a soft shimmering blue, and her long silver hair glowed faintly in the morning sun. She wore a dress made from a strange fabric that caught the light and shifted in color every time she moved. Her eyes were large, bright, and filled with something sharp, like she was both curious and angry at the same time. John slowed his steps, unsure whether to greet her or just walk past. But before he could say a word, the girl raised her voice. "Stop wasting water, human," she shouted, her tone loud enough to echo off the fountain walls. John froze in place, completely taken by surprise. He quickly looked around, trying to figure out what she meant. The fountain water was flowing. Normally, the garden sprinklers were watering the grass, and he wasn't touching any of it. Still confused, he turned back to her and asked, "What are you talking about?" The alien girl stepped forward, her movements smooth but full of purpose. She pointed directly at him, her long fingers tipped with tiny silver nails that caught the sunlight. I saw you wasting water," she said, her voice lower now, but still carrying that edge of frustration. Her accent was strange, as if each word had a melody that didn't quite match human speech. John shook his head. "I wasn't wasting anything," he replied. But his voice was uncertain. The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then she said something that made John's face turn red. "You humans, you let water run for no reason, even for something as primitive as relieving yourselves." John's mind instantly replayed the moment just a few minutes ago, when he had taken a detour behind the tall bushes to answer nature's call. He hadn't thought anyone was around, but apparently this strange alien girl had been watching. John felt heat rising in his cheeks, both from embarrassment and from the strange way she had put it. "Wait, you were following me?" he asked, trying to sound calm but failing. Her eyes narrowed. "I was observing," she replied, "on my homeworld. Water is the most valuable substance, more precious than gold or energy crystals. We never waste a single drop." Her tone was dead serious, and John could tell she wasn't exaggerating. John tried to find the right words. "Well, on Earth, water is more common, at least in some places," he explained slowly. But she shook her head quickly. "That is why your kind will never understand until it is too late," she said, almost like a warning. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the only sound being the steady trickle of the fountain. John found himself studying her face, the way her silver hair framed her sharp jawline, the strange markings under her eyes that looked almost like glowing tattoos. He had met aliens before, but none like her, none who made him feel like he was being judged for every little thing. Finally, John took a small step closer. "Who are you?" he asked. The girl hesitated before answering, her voice softer now. "My name is Layara, and I am here to study how humans treat their most precious resource." She glanced at the fountain and back at him, and so far, "I am not impressed." John didn't know whether to feel insulted or curious. Part of him wanted to argue, to defend his people, but another part of him wondered why she cared so much, and why she had chosen him of all people to confront. Before he could decide what to say next, Layara turned her head slightly, as if listening to something far away. Her expression changed, a flicker of concern crossing her face. She looked back at John. "You should leave this place soon, human," she said. "There are things about your city you do not yet know, and they are about to change. John's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? He asked quickly, but Liara had already stepped back, blending into the garden shadows as if she was part of them. In the blink of an eye, she was gone, leaving John standing alone by the fountain. The morning air felt colder now, and the peaceful garden no longer felt safe. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would change his life forever. John didn't leave the garden right away, even though Lyra's words still echoed in his mind. Something about the way she spoke, the urgency in her tone, made it impossible for him to just walk away. He kept glancing toward the shadows where she had vanished, half expecting her to reappear, but the garden was still and quiet again, except for the soft whisper of wind through the trees. He finally decided to head to work, taking the long route this time. Yet even as he walked, his mind replayed the strange encounter, an alien girl accusing him of wasting water, then warning him about some unknown danger in his own city. It didn't make sense. And that was exactly what bothered him. By the time he reached the outer district, the streets were busier, vendors were calling out their prices, air trams zipped overhead, and children ran between the stalls. Everything seemed normal, which made Lyra's warning feel even stranger. If something was about to happen, there was no sign of it here. But just as John was starting to convince himself it was nothing, a loud hum rolled through the air. It was deep, mechanical, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. People around him stopped, looking up in confusion. From the far edge of the district, a convoy of black hovercrafts was gliding in formation. Their glossy armor reflected the sunlight, and each bore the insignia of the Galactic Regulation Authority, the GRA. John felt a knot form in his stomach. The GRA didn't usually come here, not unless there was something serious going on. The crowd parted nervously as the vehicle stopped near the central fountain. From the lead craft, a tall alien officer stepped out, his uniform crisp and his face hidden behind a tinted visor. "This area is now under investigation," the officer's voice boomed through a translator unit. "All residents will remain indoors until further notice." His words carried the kind of authority that made everyone obey instantly. Shutters closed, market stalls folded, and within minutes the lively street turned into an empty corridor. John stayed where he was, partly hidden behind a supply cart. The officer was scanning the area with a small handheld device. Its display flickered with symbols John couldn't understand, but the way the officer's stance stiffened told him something had been found. 2 more GRA agents emerged, carrying a sealed container filled with clear blue liquid. Even from a distance, John could tell it wasn't ordinary water. It seemed to shimmer faintly, like it was alive. The officer tapped his comm unit. "We've confirmed it. Trace amounts are spreading through the district." John didn't understand, but a cold shiver ran through him. Was this what Lyra had been warning him about? Was this strange glowing liquid connected to water somehow? Before he could think further, a shadow moved beside him. He turned quickly, and there she was, Lyra. She pressed a finger to her lips, motioning for silence. Without a word, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him away from the street, slipping between narrow alleys until the GRA convoy was out of sight. Only when they reached a hidden courtyard did she release him. "You didn't listen," she said, her voice a mix of frustration and relief. "I told you to leave, now they're here. And it's worse than I thought." John's pulse was still racing. "Who are they? And what is that stuff they found?" Lyra's eyes darkened. "That is aquatium, a rare element my people discovered centuries ago. It can store and multiply water molecules indefinitely, but it's also unstable. If it leaks into the wrong system, it can poison entire cities." John's mind was spinning. "And you think it's already here?" Lyra nodded grimly. "Not think, no, and the GRA isn't here to protect you. They're here to take control of it before your people even understand what's happening." She took a deep breath, her glowing hair swaying in the dim light. "If you want to survive, human, you're going to have to trust me, because this is only the beginning." John didn't have time to argue or ask more questions. Liara's grip on his wrist tightened, and before he could react, she was pulling him toward a narrow side passage. Her movements were quick and silent, like she had been trained for situations like this. John stumbled once, but she didn't slow down. Somewhere in the distance, he heard a metallic echo, the sound of boots hitting the ground in perfect rhythm. "They've already tracked us," Liara whispered without turning her head. "How?" "We didn't do anything," John hissed back. "It's not about what we did, it's about what you saw," she replied sharply. Her tone made John's stomach sink. If the GRA was after them because he had simply been there, then this was far worse than he had imagined. They darted through the alley, the smell of damp stone and rust filling the air. Behind them, the sound of footsteps grew louder. John risked a glance over his shoulder. 2 GRA agents in black armor were closing in. Their visors glowed red, scanning every movement. One of them raised a small device, and a faint blue beam swept over the walls like a hunting light. "Keep moving," Liara ordered. They turned sharply into another passage, but it led to a dead end, a high wall topped with jagged metal. John's heart pounded. "We're trapped," he said. Liara shook her head, her eyes flashing. "Not yet." She reached into a hidden pouch on her waist and pulled out a small, disc-shaped object. She pressed it against the wall, and it began to hum softly. A glowing outline appeared, spreading in a perfect circle. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the wall shimmered and dissolved into a hole just wide enough for them to slip through. "Go," Liara said, pushing John ahead. He stumbled into a dim underground corridor. The air colder here. The walls were lined with old pipes, some dripping water. It was darker than he liked, but at least it was quiet. For a moment, he thought they had lost their pursuers. That hope shattered when a loud clang echoed behind them. A gray drone floated into view, its lens glowing like an unblinking eye. It let out a sharp metallic chirp before speeding toward them. "Faster," Liara urged, her steps quick but steady. John's breath came in ragged gasps as they ran, weaving through the pipes. The drone fired a flash of blue light, striking the wall near John's head. The metal sizzled, leaving a smoking mark. "That wasn't a warning shot, was it?" John asked between breaths. "No," Liara replied, her voice grim. "That was to make sure you don't stop." They reached a fork in the corridor. Liara didn't hesitate. She took the left path, leading them into a wider chamber filled with the sound of rushing water. In the center was an underground reservoir, its surface glowing faintly with the same strange shimmer John had seen in the container earlier. "This is where it's spreading," Liara said quickly. Before John could ask what she meant, another set of heavy footsteps echoed from above. The GRA agents had found them, their visors glowing like twin red beacons in the darkness. Liara's voice dropped to a whisper. "We have 2 choices. Run deeper into the tunnels and risk getting lost forever, or jump into the reservoir and disappear from their scanners." John's eyes widened. "That water doesn't look safe." Liara met his gaze, her tone firm. "It isn't, but it's the only way to live." Before John could answer, a burst of blue energy struck the ground beside them, showering them in sparks. Liara grabbed his arm again, and with one last breath, they leapt together into the shimmering water. The cold hit John first, sharp and biting as the shimmering water closed over his head. His lungs screamed for air, but Liara's grip on his arm was strong, pulling him deeper into the dark. The water around them didn't behave like normal water. It was thicker, almost like liquid light, flowing and swirling with its own strange rhythm. Through the haze, John saw faint trails of glowing patterns, like symbols drifting in the current. They weren't random. They looked almost like writing. He wanted to slow down, to look closer, but Liara didn't give him the chance. Her movements were fast and purposeful, like she knew exactly where she was going. John's chest burned, desperate for oxygen. Just as he thought he couldn't hold his breath any longer, Liara pressed a small silver device to his neck. There was a sudden rush of cool air in his lungs. even though they were still underwater. He gasped in shock, bubbles escaping into the shimmering depths. "What?" He started, but his voice came out perfectly clear. "This field lets you breathe down here," Liara explained quickly, her voice sounding strange in the watery space. "But it won't last forever." Shapes began to emerge in the darkness. Below, at first John thought they were rocks, but as they got closer, he saw they were structures, tower-like shapes, bridges, and what looked like doorways, all covered in a layer of glowing blue moss. It was a city, buried deep beneath the surface, hidden away from the world above. "What is this place?" John asked, his voice low with awe. Lyra's eyes softened for a moment. "It's older than your world, human. This was one of the last sanctuaries of my people before the waters began to die." She brushed her fingers against a stone pillar, the moss lighting up at her touch. "But it's not abandoned anymore," she added quietly. "Something woke up here." Before John could ask what she meant, a deep vibration rolled through the water. It was low at first, like the hum of a giant engine, but it grew louder, shaking the very walls around them. From the darkness ahead, two massive shapes moved into view. At first, they looked like statues, tall armored figures with long, blade-like arms, but then their eyes lit up with a blinding white glow. "Guardians," Liara said sharply, her tone suddenly tense. "They were built to protect this place, but they won't know the difference between intruder and friend." The Guardians moved with unnatural speed, the water swirling violently around them. One raised its arm, and a bright spear of energy shot through the water, narrowly missing John's head. The heat from it sizzled even in the cold depths. "They don't look friendly," John muttered, trying to keep his voice steady. "They're not," Liara said, grabbing his arm again. "Stay close to me and don't stop moving." They darted between ancient pillars, the glow from the moss casting eerie shadows. The Guardians followed, their movements slicing through the water with terrifying precision. A narrow tunnel appeared ahead, half collapsed and barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Liara didn't slow down, shoving John inside first. The stones scraped against his arms as they pushed through, the sound of the Guardians' pursuit growing fainter behind them. Finally, they emerged into a small chamber, its walls covered in the same glowing symbols John had seen before. In the center floated a crystal sphere, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Lyra's eyes locked on it, her voice almost a whisper. "This is the heart of the sanctuary." John looked at her, confused. "What does it do?" Liara hesitated, then met his gaze. "It controls the water of this entire sector. If it falls into the wrong hands, every source in your city will either dry up or turn toxic." Before John could reply, a faint red light swept across the chamber walls. It wasn't the Guardians this time. It was a gray-eyed drone, somehow already inside the sanctuary. Lyra's expression hardened. "They found us, and if they take the heart, it's over." The red beam from the GRA drone swept across the chamber like an unblinking eye. It paused for a moment on the crystal sphere, then shifted toward John and Liara. A faint hum built inside the machine, and John didn't need to be a soldier to know it was preparing to fire. "Move," Liara said sharply, pushing John behind one of the stone pillars. The drone released a pulse of energy that cracked the pillar's surface, sending glowing moss drifting into the water like falling dust. John's pulse raced. How did they even get down here? Lyra's eyes stayed locked on the drone. "They've been following me for days, but I didn't think they'd risk entering the sanctuary." The crystal sphere in the center of the chamber pulsed again. Brighter now, John felt a strange vibration in his chest every time it glowed, almost like it was calling to him. He stepped closer without thinking, his fingertips brushing the water around it. The glow suddenly flared, casting a wave of light through the room. Symbols along the walls lit up in sequence, as if reacting to his presence. Lyra's voice broke through his trance. "John, step back," she said quickly. But the crystal's light didn't fade. It grew stronger, wrapping around his arm like strands of living energy. "It's connecting to you," Liara said in shock, her eyes widening. That's impossible. Only a keeper should be able to do that. Before John could ask what a keeper was, the drone surged forward. Firing another energy pulse, Liara threw a small disc into its path. It exploded in a flash of white light, disorienting the machine just long enough for her to grab John's shoulder. "We have to go now," she said, but the crystal sphere's glow tightened around his arm, refusing to let go. "I can't," John said, his voice tense. "It's pulling me." The symbols on the walls began to shift, forming new patterns. Lyra's expression changed from urgency to realization. "It's not pulling you. It's choosing you," she said slowly. "You're the only one here who can move it." John's mind reeled. "Move it where?" Lyra's gaze hardened. "Away from here, away from the GRA. If they take it, they'll control every drop of water in this city, and they won't use it to help anyone." The drone recovered from the flash and charged forward again. Liara drew a slim metallic blade from her belt, striking at the machine with precise, practiced movements. Sparks shot through the water as she slashed at its sensors. But another faint red glow appeared from the far tunnel. More drones were coming. "John, now!" she shouted. He focused on the sphere, unsure how to even move it, but as he thought about lifting it, the crystal seemed to respond, breaking free from its place and floating into his hands. The weight was strange, not heavy, but almost like holding a current of water that wanted to move on its own. The moment he touched it fully, a deep rumble echoed through the sanctuary. The walls trembled, and a rush of water began pulling toward an opening at the far end. Liara grabbed his arm. "That's our way out. Follow the current." They swam into the rushing water, the drones chasing close behind. The glowing tunnel twisted and turned, carrying them deeper into the unknown. John held the crystal tight, its steady pulse syncing with his heartbeat. He didn't know why it had chosen him, but he had the feeling that his life and the fate of the city now depended on keeping it safe. The current dragged John and Liara forward like a living river. The walls of the tunnel glowed with shifting blue symbols, their light pulsing in rhythm with the crystal in John's hands. Water rushed past them so fast it felt like flying, the sound roaring in his ears. But every twist and turn brought the uneasy thought that they weren't alone in the flow. Behind them, the faint hum of the GRA drones grew louder. Their red tracking lights cut through the swirling blue like tiny blades. "They're keeping up," John said through gritted teeth, trying not to lose his grip on the crystal. Liara swam ahead, scanning the tunnel walls. "This current isn't just a passage, it's a defense system. Hold on to something when I tell you." The tunnel suddenly widened into a massive underwater chamber. Dozens of stone arches stretched overhead, each covered in luminous moss. As they crossed the space, the walls began to shift. Panels rotated open, releasing streams of razor-thin currents that sliced through the water with deadly speed. "Now!" Liara shouted, pulling John against the side of an arch. The deadly streams tore past them, catching two of the chasing drones and shredding their metal shells into drifting debris. John's heart pounded. "You call that a defense system?" Liara's lips curved slightly. "It's working, isn't it?" They pushed forward, but the current suddenly shifted direction. Instead of flowing forward, it began pulling them down into a spiraling descent. John's ears popped as the pressure built. Faint flashes of movement appeared below, not drones, but something larger, moving with slow, deliberate grace. As they descended further, the shape became clear. It was a massive serpent-like creature, its scales glowing in streaks of silver and blue. Its eyes were bright and intelligent, watching them with unblinking focus. "What is that?" John whispered. Lyra's tone dropped. "A sentinel, older than the sanctuary itself. It guards the deepest passages." The sentinel swam closer, its body coiling through the water with eerie silence. It circled them once, its gaze flicking between Liara and the crystal in John's arms. Instead of attacking, it released a low, resonant hum. The crystal responded, pulsing faster as if speaking back. John felt a strange warmth spread from the crystal into his chest. A thought formed. In his mind, not in words but in pure feeling, the way ahead is open to you. The sentinel moved aside, its huge form gliding into the shadows. A narrow tunnel appeared behind it, glowing faintly with golden light. We need to go before the GRA finds another way in, Liara said. They swam through the golden-lit passage. The current now calmer, but still fast enough to carry them. For a moment, it felt like they had escaped. Then the tunnel wall shook violently. A blast from behind sent a shockwave through the water, spinning John sideways. The GRA drones were back. But this time they weren't alone. 2 black-armored divers swam alongside them, their weapons glowing with unstable blue energy. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They've sent hunters, and they're not going to stop until they have the crystal. John tightened his grip, his jaw set. Then we make sure they don't get it. The hunters closed in fast, their movements sharp and controlled. The GRA drones flanked them, scanning the tunnel and projecting thin red tracking lines that locked onto the crystal in John's arms. The golden-lit passage ahead narrowed into a final chamber, and at the far end stood a massive circular gate. It was carved with the same glowing symbols John had seen throughout the sanctuary, but these burned brighter, almost alive. That's the last barrier, Liara said, her voice steady but urgent. If we can open it, the current will carry us straight to the surface, but it only opens for someone the sanctuary accepts. Her eyes flicked to the crystal in John's hands. That means you. John didn't have time to question. The hunters fired their weapons, streams of blue energy slicing through the water. Liara deflected one shot with her blade, the impact sending a shockwave that rattled John's bones. Go! She shouted, holding the attackers back. I'll cover you. John swam hard toward the gate. As he approached, the symbols shifted, rearranging into a circular pattern. The crystal pulsed faster in his grip, and without thinking, he pressed it into the center of the gate. A deep rumble filled the chamber, and golden light exploded outward. The gate's stone panels rotated, locking into place before sliding open, revealing a torrent of bright, surging water. The sudden pull almost ripped the crystal from John's hands. Liara darted toward him, but one of the hunters grabbed her ankle, dragging her back. John spun around, heart pounding. Lyra's eyes met his, fierce but calm. Take it and go, she said. John shook his head. Not without you. In that split second, one of the drones fired at him. John twisted, the shot grazing his side with a burst of heat. Ignoring the pain, he kicked toward Liara, slamming his shoulder into the hunter holding her. The grip loosened, and Liara tore free, flipping her blade in a clean arc that sliced the hunter's weapon in half. Now, she shouted, grabbing his arm. They both dove into the open current, the force pulling them forward like a living wave. The golden light swallowed them, the sound of battle fading into the distance. The current carried them upward, faster and faster, until the light above broke into blinding daylight. They burst through the surface into an isolated lake far from the city. Gasping for air, John still held the crystal tight, its glow now calm and steady. Liara looked at him, her silver hair dripping and her eyes unreadable. You've been chosen, human, whether you like it or not. You're the keeper now. John stared at the crystal, then back toward the city's distant skyline. He didn't know exactly what being a keeper meant, but he knew one thing. The fight for the water, for the city, had only just begun.